Welcome to In the News for May 31st, 2024. Wow, the last day of May. Who knew? I am Brett Burney from appsandlaw.com.
And this is Jeff Richardson from iPhone JD. Hey, Brett.
Good morning, Jeff. Good to talk with you and good to hear how your Apple Pencil Pro is doing. When you posted this earlier this week, just 3 or 4 days ago now, 3 days ago, I was like, I immediately stopped what I was doing. I wanted to read through it because I've been waiting for you to put all of your thoughts down about using the brand new Apple Pencil Pro. It's like now it's so confusing to talk to people about the Apple Pencil, Jeff, as you know, but now this is the Apple Pencil Pro with all of the updates that come with it. It sounds like you're pretty happy with it.
Yeah, I think it probably says something that I posted my iPad Pro review pretty quickly after I got it. But the Apple Pencil review, that's the one that I wanted to wait like 10 days. I wanted to actually really use it. That probably tells you something about where my brain is. But I really love that. I've been using styluses for so long. I really enjoy using them. It's a big part of my practice. I'm always writing stuff down and annotating cases. A big part of my law practice is I'm downloading cases from Westlaw and I'm highlighting them and I'm annotating them and everything else. So I use the pencil a lot. And so I really wanted to get to know the new Apple Pencil Pro. And it's funny because, from on camera right now, unless you read that little thing that says Pencil Pro,
that's your
there's
Apple
no
Pencil.
way for you. Yeah, there's no way to tell because it looks exactly the same. And one of the interviews that I linked to this week was interesting. It was from a French publication, and some of the designers of it were talking about that because it's such a different device, it's got so many new things inside of it, the haptics and the Find My and everything else, that it was actually an engineering challenge to make it fit in the exact same, size and to make it weighted the same way, because it doesn't feel like there's got, extra stuff at the front or extra stuff at the back. It just feels normal. You don't even think about it. So that in itself is sort of interesting. It's part of you can look at it and say, oh, it looks the same. That's not impressive. I see it as just the opposite. The fact that it has so much more inside of it and yet it looks the same.
It's amazing.
That is the hard part, because that's what you don't want to mess up something. You don't want to mess with something that's already good, which is the form factor. Now that they have the flat side in it, because we always remember the original Apple Pencil, which was completely round. That didn't work as well because it would roll around your table.
I don't even know where mine
is.
Mine rolled off the table.
Exactly. It rolled off the table onto the floor, and it just like the old song about meatballs.
I love this little picture, by the way, you put in here. You took a picture of both the Apple Pencil, normal, regular, and the Apple Pencil Pro. And truly, Jeff, there is no other way to tell visually a difference there other than one has Pro.
Can I tell you a secret about this picture? Don't tell anybody else about it, okay? Between you and me, in order to get that picture, I couldn't get it because the flat side, it wants to roll onto the flat side, and yet for the picture, I needed to show the flat side because the flat side is where it says Pencil or Pencil Pro.
That's right.
And so I had to take a little bit of Scotch tape, and so you know how you double over Scotch tape and put it underneath it to get them to stay in this position. This is not the natural position that an Apple Pencil in this position. This is the little secrets behind the scenes.
Of a hardworking blogger.
I feel like I'm telling you that the picture that Burger King shows of their burger is not exactly what you're going to get when you go to Burger King.
That's not real meat.
Exactly.
That's plastic.
So,
right.
But anyway,
thanks for doing that. I appreciate
the picture does show that it really does look exactly the same. But just to sort of go through the features and what's interesting, and again, many people know about them, but the haptic feedback is so nice. Haptic feedback is something that Apple has been playing with for so many years. We have it on the iPhone. We have it, of course, in the AirPods Pro. And I love the fact that on my AirPods, if I squeeze down onto the AirPods Pro, it pauses or plays, but the haptic feedback, I honestly feel like I'm squeezing it. And I know that I'm not, because it's a piece of plastic. It's not moving, but your brain is tricked into thinking that you really are squeezing it. And the exact same is true with this. When I squeeze it down, I honestly feel like I'm pushing it, and like it's got like a little play in it. So it's both good for creating the illusion that you're pressing a button that doesn't really exist. And then also, as I notice, like if you double tap, which you've been able to do for a long time, but it now tells you, yes, you've switched tools. And so it's a silly little thing, but it's so much nicer that if there was nothing else that the Pro added but the haptic feedback, I would still feel like, oh, this is a great step forward. But that's just the first feature, which is really what's cool.
Yeah.
So I love that. The squeeze feature, as I mentioned, was something that for a while, like for the first couple of days, I was like, gosh, I don't think I like this because I was squeezing it by accident and the little
Right.
palette was coming up and I would be like, oh, well, do I have to stop writing? But then once I learned that if the palette comes up by mistake, just ignore it, just keep writing. It was fine.
Just keep
And then
going.
I got to the
Okay.
point where
Okay.
I actually do wanted to switch tools and I would switch them via the palette as opposed to going up to the top of the screen and choosing different pens there. And it really does save time and it's convenient and it's just, it just makes it easier to work with. So I like that.
You know, I just gotta say, I love the fact that you talked about that because I know you use the Good Notes app for like handwriting notes. I like the Notability app. The only thing sometimes in Notability, I wasn't so happy with this. They've played around with where they put my little annotation toolbar, Jeff.
Oh,
And
I
so
didn't know that.
at some point, it was up at the top, like in Good Notes, I think, right? I think it's
Right,
still
it's
at the very top.
Yeah,
And so if
yeah.
you wanted to change to like a red pen or a black pen, you would have to go all the way up to the top and tap it. Now, in Notability, at some point, they had it all at the top, and I had to go all the way to the top. At one point, I think in a previous version, they had a little tiny annotation toolbar that you could slide over on the left side. And so I wasn't like, I could just like, it wasn't quite as far for me to go over and tap and go to a different color. But then they've now, today, it's over on the right side and it's still not very far, but I have to do 2 taps, what used to only take me 1 tap, if that makes sense. I can do some favorites, but it's not as big. Anyway, since I have seen this, and I was so glad to see that you addressed this too, that the fact that I can pull up that annotation palette, that little toolbar right there under the pen. Now, as long as Good Notes and Notability and other apps support that it's right there. I'm very excited about that. I was very, very excited to see you write about that.
Yeah, yeah. So it's really nice. My one critique of Good Notes right now is that the undo feature, as I mentioned, they're not using the very nice, very cool Apple undo feature, which allows you to bring up this little arc and you can go and as you go through it, you can like undo once, twice, 3 times, as many undos as an app supports. And that is so useful. But for whatever reason, Good Notes doesn't have it. In fact, I say for whatever reason, I have no inside information on this, but just as a pure prediction, my guess is that Apple probably let the Good Notes developers know that this was coming like just a little beforehand, enough for them to be in the store on day one. But I suspect that the Good Notes people did not have complete full access to it yet. So, my theory in my head is that the Good Notes developers didn't even realize that Apple was going to have this cool undo feature. And so they just came up with their own thing. And now that they've come out with it, on the other hand, there's another app called Procreate, which when Apple was showing off the new iPad Pro with the Apple Pencil Pro, they actually did take advantage of it to like undo a whole bunch of levels of. So my guess is that Apple probably only, Apple likes to keep things close to the vest before they're publicly announced.
Sure.
And so maybe they told 1 or 2 developers, but not others. So that's my hope, at least. So my hope is that now that Good Notes has seen how cool the Apple undo feature is, that they'll simply incorporate that into what is otherwise a very cool little pop-up tool palette. So
I'm excited about that too. And can I just ask quickly? So those little that you can undo, are you twisting the barrel of the pencil to get to those undos, or
you're actually going down? So for example, I would squeeze. So if I'm in an app like PDF what's the PDF app that we use?
PDF Expert.
PDF Expert.
Yeah.
So if I'm in PDF Expert, which by the way doesn't yet really officially support squeeze, if I'm in PDF Expert and I squeeze my pen, all I see is the palette that allows me to do or undo. I don't see anything else. So they don't have a built-in thing. But when you squeeze it and you tap on the little undo, then the picture that I'm sure that you're showing on the screen right now pops up, and you have a notch based upon how many things you've done. So if you have made 3 changes, there'll be 3 notches. If you've done 12 changes, and maybe there'll be 12 notches. And so then you actually just sort of use your pencil to go around the arc. And again, that haptic feedback, the reason I say is because as you move the pencil around that little arc of changes, you will see on the actual screen the changes, be undone or redone as you go the other direction. And you will feel the haptic feedback so that you completely understand I'm undoing 1 thing. Now I'm undoing 2 things. I'm undoing 3 things. And so that's how that works. And in fact, I say that I tap on it. Actually, now that I think about it, it might be that
it's funny that you mentioned PDF Expert. They don't have it in here now, but I remember when they first, several years ago, Jeff, that at the bottom of your annotation toolbar inside PDF Expert, they had the little undo arrow, which everybody knows is like the arrow that goes back to the left. But if you held if you tapped and held on that undo button, I remember that PDF Expert at one point had like a whole line of the different places that you could back up to. I used to love that, and they took it out. I'm not sure exactly when they took it out, but now it's just simple, undo, redo, one step at a time. But I am thrilled to see this undo feature that you're talking about, and I am very hopeful that it will come more to more apps on the iPad.
And in fact, now that I'm showing it and I'm doing it, so in the picture that you're looking at, you see that at the very top there's the undo icon, which is the arrow that has like a thing. What I'm actually doing is that becomes movable. So once I bring that up, I actually tap down with my Apple Pencil and I slide that little circle. And as I slide it, I go back and forth between undoing all these things or redoing them.
And you can see it as it goes back and forth.
You can see it,
right?
As you go halfway through, half your pages are gone. It's totally intuitive. It's fast, it's intuitive, it's so much better than just randomly doing, you don't even know how many levels deep you could do undo, redo. It's one of these perfect, I hate to gush too much about the undo feature because how exciting is that? But when it works well, we've all been in situations where you need to do an undo. And when you have a really, really good undo redo feature, you're just like, wow, why wasn't it always this way? And that's just one tiny little thing. So I absolutely love it.
Good.
The other things that are cool, it's got the hover feature, which again is not new. It had existed with the last version of the iPad Pro. It's just not a feature I had used before because you and I both had used the two generations back version of the iPad Pro. But hover can be a cool little feature when you do it. Find My is of course nice. I'm hoping I don't have to use it in real life, but I did sort of play with it at my house. I left my Apple Pencil in one room and then went to another room and I'm like, where's my Apple Pencil? And sure enough, I was able to find it, as you can see with the pictures there with my iPhone.
Nice.
And it's sort of like you're getting hotter, you're getting colder. You move around your iPhone around your house and it gets a bigger and bigger circle as you get closer and closer.
Almost so there, within reach.
Yeah. Now,
reach the barrel roll you'll touch it.
The barrel roll feature is the one that you were talking about before, and that's the one that I really don't find myself using that much because what it really does is it changes the shape of a brush, and I don't really use brushes. I mean, I'm not a painter, so it's probably not something that I'm personally going to be using, at least for now, but it could be in the future that developers come up with something interesting to do with the barrel roll besides changing brushes. I don't know what. And so I'm hoping that some creative developers will say, hey, now that this is a feature, let's allow it to do something. So so there, and then the shadow, which is just sort of an extra thing. Oh, one other thing I should mention, and I mentioned this in the review, and this is, I guess, a hover feature, but I actually like the fact that sometimes I use my Apple Pencil not for writing, but just to navigate my interface. I'm just using my iPad, I'm using a web browser. I just tap here just because it's in my hand. It's just sort of fun to sort of do it. And I like the fact that with hover, if you're on a website that has something that when you would hover a mouse cursor over it, it brings down a little menu or something like that, you could do the same thing with the pencil. So you can just hover without selecting.
Nice.
And that's cool. It has nothing to do with writing. It has nothing to do with using it as an art pen. It's just using it as a interface device. And it's a cool, it's a silly little feature, but it's a cool little feature. So I'm a huge fan of the Apple Pencil Pro. Haptic feedback enough would have been great for me to have all these other features. And then the cost, I mean, it's $129, which is the same price that we had always been paying for the nicer Apple Pencil. And and then of course, if you do want to pay less, you can get the USB-C, the less expensive one that they came up with last year. But I think it's great to have these options. Oh, and I guess I should also mention that the squeeze, as you're showing right now, by default, the squeeze option brings up the tool palette, but you can actually have it do whatever you want. Yeah, including shortcuts. So, I mean, if you had some really interesting shortcut, and I have a silly example of just, open up my Safari app or something, but, you can assign it to the squeeze function. And so I can definitely see time in the future that depending upon what I'm doing in certain circumstances, I might want the squeeze function to do something completely different just to make it faster for me to use my iPad. And, there's a bajillion shortcuts, so truly limitless options. It's just a great product.
I have a question for clarification quickly, because as you said, I've always done double tap on the pencil to switch between, like, for me, it's just between my writing instrument and the eraser. Is the double tap still there, Jeff? And then the squeeze is in addition to that? Okay. So you can squeeze or double tap. In other words, I can assign, I can keep my double tap the same as I've always had it. And I get haptic feedback now, which would be amazing. But then I can assign something else to the squeeze, or frankly, I guess, because I could do the squeeze as switch between current tool and eraser. I can see on this picture here. But in other words, you still have both of those. So really, they've added kind of an interactive element to the Apple Pencil Pro. In addition to the double tap, you can do the squeeze now.
I should have made that more clear. In fact, the picture that you're looking at right there, that is the settings for squeeze. But there's a similar one for double tap that has all of the same features here, except for shortcut. And so shortcut, you can only do with the squeeze. But if you wanted, for example, you could have double tap be switched between the current tool and the eraser, which is what I have mine now too. And you could have squeeze be switched between the current tool and the last use, which is both very similar. You know, it's just, do you want to just go to the eraser or just go to the last use?
Right.
Both, you know, so you could have that, or you could switch it up. You could say everything I used to always do double tap in the past. Now I'm going to make that my squeeze function. And instead I'm going to have double tap do something like show the color palette or something like that. So you have like a little bit more control. You know, in my brain, the double tap switching between the current tool and the eraser, I've just been having it do that for so long now that for me that makes perfect sense. And so I didn't want to change that. So I'm going to leave that with the regular old double tap feature. And the only difference between now and what I had before is I get haptic feedback when I do double tap. But otherwise, it works the same as before. My brain is ready for that. So that's just what I'm used to. It's for me, it's the squeeze feature that I'm currently using with the tool palette. But again, maybe I'll change it to a shortcut in the future. We'll see. But cool. And the whole interface, like in the settings app, this is brand new too. I don't think that there was a settings feature like this in the past, or at least not certainly as nice as this. But this one's got like an animation, and it shows the squeeze and all the different things you can assign it to. Same thing for double tap too, all the different options. So it's a nice improvement.
And last question, you find that the place where it docks on top of your iPad, have you had any issues with that? Like, is it the same? Because I was at an Apple store last week, and I looked at it, and sure enough, the Apple Pencil is just a little thicker than the actual thickness of the iPad Pro.
Yeah.
But it seems like it all works the same on there, right? And I know just you can just a little bit. But you haven't found any issues with that, even with your folio cover and anything like that? It all fits on there just fine?
It all fits on there great. And in fact, I know, you know, intellectually that it's all different because the top of the iPad Pro is now housing a camera, which it never had that before, right? And so I know that the magnets are in different places. In fact, if you take your old Apple Pencil and you try to attach it to a brand new iPad Pro, it won't go because the magnets are in different places. So it will sort of like reject it a little bit. So, but even though Apple has changed the positions of the magnets, the function is exactly the same. You stick it on the top.
Okay, good.
Nobody would really notice the difference unless you go hunting for it. It does everything, you know, everything that you used to love about that feature in the past is just as good, even though it's doing it a little differently behind the scenes.
Thank you for your review of the Apple Pencil Pro, my friend Jeff. That is really good. As I said, I've been waiting for that because I know you have been sitting on it for a while, thinking about it, contemplating it, being deliberate about what you're going to write about. But that was a very, very good review, and I appreciate you clarifying some of the questions that I have on that. There have been other departments at Apple that have been very busy, not just the Apple Pencil Pro people. Apparently the Apple Music people have been busy coming up with the best 100 albums ever made in life. I saw this come through, and actually I saw it first on my phone, and I started scrolling through the website, and I was just mesmerized, not by the actual albums, because some of these I do and don't agree with. I was mesmerized more by the way that they presented this. This is one of the prettiest presentations of albums and just a list that I think I have ever seen. I just love the way this goes, and I'm glad that you linked to it today.
Yeah, it's funny because as you're scrolling down the website, instead of the albums appearing from the bottom, they appear from the side and they go across at this angle. So it's a very, it's an interesting way to bring that out. So, but that's why I wanted to make sure I linked to it in my article too, because you should go check it out if nothing else, just to see some flying album covers. The, of course, the content. I mean, it's impossible. You can't ask anyone. I don't care how quote unquote credentialed you are, what are the best songs, what are the best albums. That's like saying, what are the best paintings of all time? What is the best anything? It's completely subjective. And I think it's funny because, the top, you would think of the top 100 albums. I've been listening to music for a long time. You would think that I would know just about all of these, but there's so many albums on here I don't know. Just in the top 10. I mean, this probably, people can laugh at me for this, but the number one album of all time, according to this list, is The Miseducation of Lauryn Hill, which is an album, Brett, that I had
Yeah.
never listened to in my life. I was playing with it,
Really?
I was listening to some of the
Wow.
songs last night, and I'm like, I don't think I recognize these songs. I'm sure I should. But so what one person thinks is the best album of all times, Jeff
Right.
Richardson says, never heard of it. Now, the number 2
Yeah.
album of all time, Michael Jackson Thriller, that one I actually do
That
know.
one, of
So,
course.
and I
Yeah.
probably know it by heart. Every
And
album,
number
every song
3,
on that
Abbey
album.
Road, of
Abbey
course.
Road, I have heard of the
Yeah.
Beatles before, yes. Purple Rain, how can you argue with Prince?
Right.
But
Right.
then,
You got
Frank
Nirvana
Ocean
on
Blonde. I
there.
mean,
Yeah.
Frank Ocean, I
Yeah.
actually
Yeah.
do know that album, but I mean, I don't know if that I would call it one of the best of all time.
Number
Stevie
5
Wonder,
is what
you
they
can't
put it
argue with
at.
Stevie
Yeah.
Wonder. What is this next one? Mad City from 2012.
Yeah. Kendrick
I totally
Lamar.
miss.
I know.
I
Well, I
do.
know Kendrick Lamar, but I don't know that's from 2012, for
Mm,
goodness gracious, on
yeah.
there.
So
I mean, these are all fun and these are great link bait, right? Because just like you said, to
yeah.
your point, maybe the flip side of that is everybody's going to check this out because everybody wants to
Mhm.
agree or disagree or see
Yeah.
it's like, hey, what's my top album? But nonetheless, all of that aside, I have been enjoying so much going through this list because even as you scroll through them, as you said, they kind of scroll left to right, but you can click on an album. It
Oh, I haven't
shows
done that
the
yet.
album
Oh,
cover.
yeah.
Oh yeah, because then it gives you a little bit of
Oh,
information about the album here, which I think is
thank
nice.
you for showing me
Even
that.
another
Oh, that's
picture.
very cool.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
And then here's what I like about it. At the bottom, if you remember back in the days of when we had to buy songs on iTunes, Jeff, you couldn't listen to the entire song, of course, but you could listen to like 30 seconds of the song, right?
Mhm.
Before you buy it. Well, they've done the same here. If you look in the upper right corner, it says you can sign in to hear full tracks and
Yeah.
add the albums to your library. I don't even sign in because I just like the fact that I can go down here and sure enough, I click on a song and it'll give me like that 30, 40-second
That is
preview of it,
cool.
which is
And I like the fact that they give you a few paragraphs about it. Yeah, go ahead.
yeah, exactly. And as you keep on scrolling this way, then it's more like a traditional scrolling website because you can go down to the
Mhm.
next album. Anyway, I just like that they did that. And then you can just, jump back a little bit if you wanted to scroll, left to
Mhm.
right on this. But I've just been enjoying personally scrolling through this website, even if I don't agree with some of these albums or I do agree with some of these albums. It's just been fun to kind of go through and some of them, to your point, that if I didn't recognize some of them, I may not want to hear the whole song, but I'll
Mhm.
definitely jump in and listen to 30 seconds of it or so, even if I'm
Yeah.
not like logged in, which I just think is
Well, it was just last weekend we had the long weekend. I was sitting downstairs in my house, and I was just doing something on my iPad, and I wanted to put some music on the HomePod minis in my house, and I wanted to listen to something different. I didn't know what to listen to,
Sure.
and I was just thinking about the fact that the Rolling Stones had recently been in New Orleans for Jazz Fest, and so I was like, well,
Right.
Apple Music, just play me the best Rolling Stones. And I mean, of course, I know Rolling Stones songs so well, but some of them I had not heard in a while, and it was just
Right.
fun. It was like, I haven't listened to like an album but I mean, again, I'm a Gen Xer talking about Rolling Stones, big deal. But with this list, I mean, that's what I like about it. It's like this weekend, if I'm doing the same thing, I'm going to go through and find an album that, maybe I don't know much about. And if somebody thinks it's one of the best of all times, give it a listen. And, I'll either find some songs that I'm like, why have I not been listening to this album? Or I will very
Right.
quickly say, whatever, this one's not for me. So
Yeah.
it's fun to
Yeah.
have lists like this.
No matter if you agree or don't agree or whatever, it's so obvious to me that somebody at Apple, a group of people, are so passionate still.
Absolutely.
They continue to be
Absolutely.
so passionate about music, Jeff. Even from the time, when we've watched this with Steve Jobs and going into music and the iTunes and the iPod. I mean, it is still so obvious that there are people that are so passionate about music that they are willing to put the time and effort into creating something like this. And it's a fun list
genuine.
to go through.
Yeah, it's really genuine. You can tell
Absolutely.
these people love music. Yeah, yeah.
There's also the Apple App Store team at Apple that have released the 2024, they call it ADA, which that acronym usually means something else for me from a legal perspective, but ABA for Apple,
Apple Design
is
Awards,
announcing their Apple Design Awards, the 2024 Apple Design Award. These are the finalists because I believe in June, in the week of WWDC, right, they will actually announce the winners of this.
Mm-hmm.
So this is a good article you'll link to on MacStories from John Voorhees, which is a nice list, and I agree with the comment that you made. Some of them I'm like, of course that should be on the list, and others I'm like, I haven't even heard of that one before, but now I want to go and try it as well.
Yeah. There's some great things on the list. And this is an example of a list where I actually prefer the list of finalists to the list of award winners, because
Right.
whoever wins the award, bravo for you. But what I'm more
Of
interested
course.
in is I want like a larger number of apps that I should consider checking out. In
Right.
fact, at the very top of this MacStories article, Brett, if you go to the top and you click on the link
Yeah.
that says Apple has announced, if you click on those 3 words, you'll actually see the Apple version of it, which is nice because they have the app pictures and stuff like that.
Ooh,
So this is a
yes.
fun way to sort of go through them. But, you know, as I go through these, it's interesting, you know, again, a list of somebody's top things, just like we talked about with music, it's going to be subjective.
Right.
I was a little surprised and then not surprised to see that one of the games on the list is the New York Times Games app. Now,
Ooh,
I use this
interesting.
app literally
Right.
every
I
day
know
of
you
my
do.
life because I play Wordle. I love to do the crosswords and stuff like that. In fact, I've mentioned before, like my wife and daughter do the crosswords at the beginning of the week, and then come like Thursday,
Right.
Friday when the harder
Right.
ones come out, I get to do those. And so I love this app. But would I have considered it for an Apple design award? You know, is there something about the user interface or the design that's so special to make it rise up above the rest? I don't know. I mean, because the app works for me, I guess so. And it does have a nice interface for going into like the archive of the New York Times and stuff like that. But I don't know that I would have given it a design award. So I think it's interesting that Apple saw something in here that I didn't. I mean, maybe you just give them credit that they've expanded between just the traditional crosswords into all of the different games that New York Times has and packing it all in one app. But so like that's an example of something that I love the app. I don't know that I would have included it on the list. And then there's other.
That's even interesting. I'm just going to say quickly, that's even interesting for me because we just talked about a new game that Apple put into their Apple News app. In other words, they're putting a lot more effort into doing their own games and their own crossword, right? In the Apple News. It's interesting to me that they would pick New York Times games and I know you use this app.
Right.
Yeah. And so anyway, but hey, great. I'm glad that they are expanding on that.
I mentioned a couple more in here. The Procreate Dreams app's got one of their awards for innovation, and that is the app that you can use to create like animations on the iPad. I mean, this is so far beyond anything that I would ever do. But when I see examples of what people have done with it, I'm just like, wow, that is really, really impressive.
You have the Apple Pencil Pro now, Jeff. You can try Procreate Dreams.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right. I'll be a great artist, I'm sure, just because I've got the pencil. In the interaction section, they have this thing called Arc Search, which I have not used before, but I know it's been available for web browsers, and now there's an app for the iPhone. It takes AI, artificial intelligence, and it works it into a search feature. So it's much like Google is doing nowadays. It can give you, in theory, better search results. But another and this is perhaps why it got a design award. So let's see if you use the app. Have you used this app before? Have you tried it out?
No.
Okay. So when you download it, it's like a web browser, right? And then once you find a web page, let's say that it brings you to a web page and like, you know, I don't feel like reading this whole web page. What you do is you pinch on it, you squeeze down, and it uses AI to summarize the web page. And I'm like, well, that's sort of interesting that it's, you know, in theory, it could save you the trouble of reading a web page. Now, the problem is that's the theory. I used it just as an example. We were just talking about my review of the Apple Pencil Pro. So I've got it in, I have the Arc Search app open right now, and I've just squeezed my review. And so it instantly gives me a summary, but the summary is not that useful. The summary has 3 parts. It says compatibility, designed for the latest iPads, features, boost improved precision, responsiveness, and a comfortable grip, making it a top choice for creative professionals and students. None of those words were in my review, and it doesn't mention any of the new features. Where's the discussion of haptic feedback? Where's the discussion of squeeze? And then it says price, available at a premium price point, reflecting its advanced technology. So this summary of my web page sucks. It's horrible.
Yeah, that's not good.
You know, this is the thing with AI. Sometimes these AI summaries can be really useful, and sometimes it's like, what are you smoking? What did you read? Did we read the same article? Like, what's going on here? So, but it is an interesting idea, and from a design standpoint, the idea that you pinch a web page to make it tiny and have a small summary of it, very cool idea. It's just that it doesn't really work very well for me, but maybe others will have more success with it. There's a couple more here that I was going to talk about. I'm gonna pick one real quick while you look for yours. Yeah, you go.
There one's called Complete Anatomy 2024. It's from Reed Elsevier, which you and I know from like the legal world. But I'll tell you, they make several apps, and another one that I like, which is very similar, called Essential Anatomy 5. That's the one that is called. The reason that I got into that app, Jeff, is because I work with lawyers that are like personal injury lawyers, or that are working on, with folks that have had, tragic health issues or broken bones or something like this. And this app is so amazing because it allows you to basically strip away like the skin, or only show veins, or only show muscles, or only show certain bones. And it's just amazing on how you can like get down and show people exactly like what kind of a bone, or what kind of a body part that you need to focus on. It's so good, in fact, because I'm doing a terrible job of explaining it, but I'm glad that they have one of these apps in here, Complete Anatomy. It's so good, in fact, that I got the app for my daughter who's going to nursing school, Jeff, because it's, when you are trying to understand, like, what does the pancreas look like, and how is that connected with other, it's like you can go down and say, I only want to see the pancreas, and I want to see where it fits in the body and connected with the nervous system and blood vessels. And you can do all of that, and then you can zoom in and zoom out. Anyway, really, really cool. And I'm glad to see
that is
one
awesome.
of those apps. Yeah, really cool stuff on there.
That is
What's
awesome.
another one from
very, very cool.
Yeah.
So I'm going to mention two more. One of them is
please.
in the category called interaction, under the games category. The last one that they have is called Finity. And Finity it's an Apple Arcade app. So in other words, you may already be paying for it if you have Apple Arcade. So otherwise it's free for you if you have it. And it's an interesting app. It's one where you basically you match three tiles. And I'm trying to think of how to describe it. There was an app that was very popular years ago called Threes, where you would connect, you take two files, like you have two numbers and you put them together, and then it's a double number and you put them together. So it's the idea that you're moving around tiles and you're sliding them. It's that type of an app where you slide things around, but it's got some interesting features to it that sometimes you can slide one way and sometimes you can't slide another way. Cool. And there's a limit. It's a beautiful designed app. It's fun. It's no pressure. It's not like you're working against a clock or anything like that. So it's just, if you're looking for one of these fun little casual games, I think it's worth checking out, Finity. And especially if you already have Apple games because you pay for Apple One or something like that, then it's free, so you might as well check it out. So that's one that I'll recommend. And then another cool one, they have the last category of apps is spatial computing, which makes sense because the Apple Vision is a new thing. There's not a ton of apps for the Apple Vision Pro right now, but there are a couple good ones out there, and I love the fact that they're highlighting them to sort of give them some. The last one that's on the list is called Luna Cozy Puzzle Games. And so this is to even describe this, it's going to be hard for me to put into words. What it is, we all know what a jigsaw puzzle is. You take your pieces and you snap them together, and it's a 2D puzzle. Imagine a 3D puzzle. And so what you have is, when you start this app and you're wearing your Apple Vision Pro, you have like a circle that'll sit there right in front of you, a big circle, like it's something that will be sitting on like a coffee table in front of you. And you can spin the circle around, all virtual, of course, and it will have a design on it that'll be like the first one you have is like a pirate treasure island. So it's like a tree, and it's got like a treasure chest, and it's got like other things. And then you can sort of see in a grayed out version what you're looking for. And then you go off to your side, and there's all these little things, and you pick it up virtually, and you need to spin around and find the place that it goes. And it starts off very simple, and then it grows into something more complex. And the puzzle itself is not hard. Don't get me wrong. This is not going to challenge your brain. It's a totally easy puzzle. At least the free one is. Maybe I haven't paid yet for the more advanced versions. Maybe some of the more advanced ones are more hard to get. The free demo model is very simple. But the reason that this app is worth checking out if you have an Apple Vision Pro is it is beautiful. I mean, when I'm playing with this thing, I mean, after about 30 seconds of me getting into it, I completely believe that there is this circular thing in my living room with all of these colorful animated things. It's because it's this augmented reality. I can see my living room around me. It's just like I'm sitting in my living room, and I just happen to have this big 3 foot high, game in the middle of it. And as I'm sitting there looking at it, I'm like, this looks so realistic. I can't believe this is all virtual, and it's beautiful, and it's a little cutesy too. It's like cutesy animations, so it's fun. It's just a feast for the eyes. So and it's such a cute idea to come up with. So I'm going to give that one a thumbs up. Anyone that has an Apple Vision Pro, which I realize is very, very few people right now, that's a cute idea.
Speaking of the Apple Vision Pro, we'll come back to maybe a couple of other apps here, but you talked about the last week we talked about the new parkour in Paris
Very
video,
cool.
and you linked to a story where David Sparks was talking about that. But I wanted to ask you quickly about this. There was something else from Marvel. I don't
Right.
really understand. You can describe this a little bit better, I
Mhm.
think. Jason Snell was talking about it too. It's the what if. Apparently, this is a world that I am not familiar with,
Yeah,
but
yeah,
it
yeah.
has now come to the Apple Vision Pro,
Mhm.
and it sounds like Jason Snell liked it, and you were able to experiment with it a little bit.
Yeah, so the series that's on, if you have Disney Plus, and if you go to the Marvel section of Disney Plus, you can see all of these what if cartoons. And what they are is
Okay.
it's sort of alternative takes in the Marvel universe. And so, for example, if you know the Marvel universe,
Okay.
you know that Captain America was a big deal in out of growing out of World War II. And one of the characters in the Captain American movies is Peggy Carter, who had her own series. But like, there might be a what if that says, what if instead of Captain America becoming the hero, what if Peggy Carter became the captain, like the Mrs. Captain America or something like that? And so,
Okay.
wouldn't that be cool if she was the one? And then you could explore stories in that. Or wouldn't it be cool if this
Okay. That
this
makes
villain
sense.
that we know from this series is going to be fighting against Doctor Strange over here? And it's just their little one-off things, and it all comes out of a comic book series that's been out for a while. So it's a fun way to basically play with your intellectual property and mix and match and come up with things. So with
I
that
see.
background, they came out with this. It's an app that you download that it's basically a cartoon that you are actually inside of. And it came out yesterday. Jason Snell had an early access to it, so he saw it last week. I played with it
Okay.
last night, right before I went to bed.
Yes.
It's fascinating. What it reminded me of is there was
Okay.
a movie that came out when we were younger in 1988 called Who Framed Roger Rabbit. Have you ever seen that movie?
Of course. Yeah.
Okay, so
Way
in
back in the day.
Who Framed Roger Rabbit, the main character is the Bob Hoskins plays this private detective named Eddie Valiant, and he
That's
suddenly goes
right.
into the world of the cartoons, right? And so imagine
Yes.
when you're watching the movie, Bob Hoskins is interacting with the Looney Tunes characters,
I
Bugs Bunny or
remember.
whoever else.
Yeah.
It's as if they are. I got that same feeling when I watched
Oh.
this last night because I'm sitting there just in the room in my house, and suddenly standing there next to me is this cartoon character, but the cartoon character is 3D. And I'm like, and it's totally convincing that they're
Oh.
sitting there in the living room with me.
Oh.
And he's looking at me
Okay.
and he's talking to me and he's showing me how to do spells. He's like, hold your hand up like this, and you can turn it this way to do a spell, and I'm turning it. So it's interactive. And I'm like, this is just bizarre because these are cartoon characters and I'm sitting here
But they're
interacting with them as if
3D.
they're in real life and they're in 3D and they're around me.
Whoa.
And so I
Whoa.
thought it was fascinating from that standpoint. Parts of it are
Wow.
augmented reality, where like the characters are in my living room. Parts of it becomes the complete virtual reality where I'm like in the middle of this cartoon watching it happening. But instead of watching a cartoon on a screen in front of you, and even instead of a 3D movie where it's 3D, but it's still within the four corners of like a screen, it's completely around me, but it's still a cartoon. And so I'm looking around and
Wow.
it's like things are moving. You feel like I'm Bob Hoskins in the middle of the Looney Tune. I'm literally within this world with all of the Marvel cartoon characters moving around me. And Captain America is next to me, and these other people are next to me, and Thanos, and I'm there. And I'm like, this is just too wild, and it's beautiful animation, as you'd imagine. Now, so
Yeah, the screens look great.
from being just a feast for your eyes, it's totally amazing. Now, they have this interactive element that, like I said, you can use your hand to do spells. That part worked
Right?
okay for me. Sometimes I couldn't use, I mean, maybe it's because I'm not very talented, but I couldn't make my hands go the right way to make the spell happen. But because it works fine. Like if you could do the spell, great, it works. And if you can't do the spell after a little bit amount of time, it just moves you to the next level. So it's no
Okay.
pressure. The story itself was okay. I mean, it wasn't the most engaging story. It's not going to win any, Oscars for being best story of the year or anything like that. It was just a fine, silly little story. Maybe it could have been better, but I mean, maybe it's just as good as all the What If stories. I haven't watched many of them, but it was fine. But so that part was whatever. But it lasted about an hour, and it was completely immersive, and I totally bought it. And
Wow.
again, I've never seen a cartoon like this. To even use the word cartoon seems inappropriate because we know what
Right.
cartoons are. You know, you
Right.
turn on your TV and you watch Bugs Bunny or you watch Fred Flintstone. That's a cartoon. The idea that I'm sitting there with the cartoon characters around me and I'm interacting with them, and they feel like I can actually see them and be a part of their world. It's just, I want more of this. And this is every time I talk about the Apple
Yeah.
Vision Pro, things that are these spatial worlds that you're part of, whether it's the game that we were just talking about that won the Apple, that's a finalist for the Apple Design Awards, where I'm moving around this object.
You're right.
It's just so fun. It is so fun to be in these immersive worlds, augmented reality or virtual reality. They're both just as cool. I agree. And so it's a free app. I mean, if you have an Apple Vision Pro, you absolutely should download it and play it.
Try
And I
it
hope
out.
that we see
Right.
more of this in the future. And I'm sure people, Disney is doing this as just sort of to let's just try one version of it. And, maybe in the future they'll come out with other ones you can purchase. And I would totally, I would absolutely pay money for these things. Now, it is a 1 hour thing. And once you've done it, you've basically done it.
You're done.
There's,
Right.
there's two different endings of it. And so I did it one way and I went one ending, and then I went back and changed my choices
The
and did
other.
the second ending. So I saw both of the endings, and I liked one of the endings better than the other one, but they're both cute. But otherwise, there's not a ton of replay value, but it's definitely a cool experience to go through. In fact,
It
I
just
say
seems
there's
like
no replay value.
it's
I might do it again just
yeah.
to see it again. So
It just seems to me like a skunk works, right?
mhm.
Let's see what we can do. Because just hearing you talk about like what we think of cartoons, it's like the Flintstones and sort of like that 2D environment. I feel like in the next two generations, Jeff, like this is what quote cartoons are going to be. And it's almost going
Mhm.
to be like those folks, several years from now, that when they talk about cartoons, that's what they're going to mean. It's going to be that immersive aspect. Anyway, really just think that
Yeah.
that's
I'll
amazing.
say one last thing about this, Brett, that if they had taken the immersive element out of this completely so that I wasn't doing spells with my hands, if it was
Right?
just sit there and watch it, but it be a spatial movie, it would have been, in my mind, 99% as good as what it actually was. Because for me,
Oh,
the cool
okay.
part was not the interactive part of it. It was more of just the idea that I'm there and that everything's around me.
You're
So
immersed in
I
it.
just
Right.
offered that. My hope is that in the future we see more stuff that's heavy on the immersive stuff, and whether you actually interact with spells, I could care less.
Well, good news. There is still some non-immersive content that's coming out. That's going to be good. This quick
Some
little
good stuff,
article you
yeah.
linked to from Cult of Mac. All the comedies and dramas coming to Apple TV Plus in summer 2024. And I got to tell you, normally I'm not that interested in like what shows are coming out, necessarily because there's so many different. You got to follow, what platform or what network that you're following. But I am very excited to see when Apple is announcing some of their new shows. Here's one with Jake Gyllenhaal, Presumed Innocent, which I think this movie looks really good. I know the story behind that, so that looks really good. There's a couple of more I know that we were talking about, some animated features. This Fancy Dance movie looks good. Some science fiction. I think what I'm struck by, number one, is just the range of different content that's coming out, which is really cool. One of my favorites coming out is Vince Vaughn. I'm a big
Yeah, I
fan
gotta
of
love
Vince
Vince
Vaughn.
Vaughn.
What is this called? Bad Monkey.
Uh-huh.
Let's see. I don't know when this is. Oh, August is when this one's coming out. But yeah, I'm definitely going to be there for anything Vince Vaughn is in. I'm
And
still,
let's just say,
I'm
and
still a
and
swingers fan. Vegas, baby. Let's go.
and before you move on, this Bad Monkey movie or TV series, it stars Vince Vaughn, which is, has the potential to be cool. But this movie is being, I think it's directed by Bill Lawrence. It's by written and directed by Bill
Oh,
Lawrence, who, he's been
who?
around television forever. He did Scrubs
Right.
and a million other things, but he did Ted Lasso. So, I mean, just
Yeah.
because Ted Lasso was such a hit doesn't necessarily mean this is going to be a hit. But it could be, and so if it's as good as Ted Lasso and it's starring Vince Vaughn, oh my goodness, that's
Oh,
going to be so much fun,
yeah.
right?
And
And
Vince
some of the
still
other
looks
things
good. He
he
looks
does look good
good
still,
here.
yeah.
Like, I mean, come on, man. That's great. I'm excited for that one. All
The
right.
first
What
one on the
else is
list that
here?
you mentioned, Presumed Innocent, which was
Yeah.
starring Jake Gyllenhaal. I mean, that book, the Scott Turow book, Presumed Innocent,
Right.
came out right
Right.
around the time that I was getting ready to go to law school. So for me
Yep.
personally, it was a very influential book. It was like before
Right.
I actually studied being a lawyer, it gave me a view of what it might be like to be a really cool lawyer. And then years later, it was a really good movie with Harrison Ford, if I remember correctly. So it was a great movie. And so now they're coming to make a TV series out of it. I'm very excited. I hope it's good because I love Presumed Innocence so much because it was such a big part of my early legal career that don't screw it up, Apple. Do a good job with
Right,
this. I'm
right.
excited about that. The
I think they'll do pretty good.
I hope so. I hope so. I mean, when you scroll through this list, there's so many cool things coming out.
I
And in fact,
know.
one
I'm
that's not
excited.
even on this list, there's actually a movie called, I think, Wolf or Wolf. Actually, because that's a movie, that's not a TV series that's coming out
Yeah.
that's going to have
Yeah.
Brad Pitt and George Clooney. Suffice it to say that if you have an Apple TV Plus
That's
subscription,
right.
there is a lot of
A lot
good
going
original
on.
content. We hope it's good. Promising original content coming out this summer. So, woohoo! I can't wait.
Apple firing on all cylinders. We got the music people, we got the App Store folks, we got the Vision Pro, we got the Apple TV Plus, and even more exciting, the Apple credit card. This continues to just fascinate me. This whole thing with the Apple credit card, Jeff. You and I talk about it quite a bit just because we know that we use it, because you and I spend quite a bit at the Apple stores, and we use it because you get a good amount. You get 3% back anytime that
Right.
you use it. But, the last thing I remember that was sort of newsworthy on this is we were going to do the buy now, pay later kind of a thing. And I think that's kind of rolled out. I wasn't all that interested in some of it, but you linked today to three new commercials that are featuring the Apple credit card, which they're very cute. You got to watch it just to enjoy them yourself. But it's one of these things. Like, I use the Apple credit card still quite a bit throughout the month, every month, and I have my recurring Apple charges on there. But it's just interesting to see how that continues to play out. There's been rumors that maybe it was going to move from Goldman Sachs to different banks and stuff like that. We haven't seen too much movement, but I'm glad to know that Apple is still doing some investment in the Apple credit cards as well.
Yeah, they're clearly all in with the credit card. They like the idea of having it. I like the idea of using it.
Me too.
The article that you linked to shows 3 new short videos that came out. They're each like
Yeah.
30-second ads, and each of the videos highlights a different aspect of the credit card. The first one, that's called
Right.
Ladder, highlights the fact that you can pay your Apple credit card so easily because you just do it with an app.
Easy.
And you can just,
Yeah.
say, take this money, because it's already set up with your checking account. So you basically
Right.
tap one button and it can, I mean, I have it pay automatically every month, but you can also, like, if you want to pay it right now, you can just click one button, choose how much you want to pay on a little spinning dial. It's super easy to pay the Apple credit card. The second one, which is
Yeah.
called Sock, basically highlights the idea that you get money back, as you said, 3% for Apple purchases, 2% and 1% for others. And then you build up that money, and the next thing you know, you've got like an extra $50. You're like, hey, $50. What am I going to spend this on? And so that's
Right.
pretty cool. And the last one, called Sweater, highlights a feature that I actually hadn't paid attention to that much, but apparently when you purchase items using an Apple credit card, it keeps like a list of all your purchases that apparently has a
Right.
nice search interface. So if you wanted to go back, I mean, I know that
That's
when
right.
most of my purchases are on my Amex card, and when I go to the Amex website to try to find a purchase, it's hard because sometimes
Yeah.
the merchant name
Yeah.
is different from what you would expect it to be and everything else. Whereas, at least based upon this commercial, and I'll have to try it out myself and see that the Apple, when you search for prior purchases, it's much more visual and nice and stuff like that. So I haven't even played with that myself. But so I mean, it makes sense for Apple to show off 3 of the things that Apple believes that they are doing well with the credit card, and I think that they're right.
Just that last thing quickly, I'm gonna add to it. It's not just the credit card. To me, it is the entire experience with the Apple Wallet, right, where
Yes,
the credit
good
card
point,
lives,
good
right?
point.
Because all of the credit cards, just to your point as well, with American Express, all of the credit cards offer apps, but they're all a little bit different, and some work better than others. Some have good features, but every time I jump into the Apple credit card in the Apple Wallet app, Jeff, it's like, it's so intuitive. Like, I know exactly what I'm looking at. It gives me all the information I need right up front. And it's so user friendly. Some of these other apps that I jump into, to your point, it's like, I know that I want to go and see, like, what's my current balance. And sometimes it'll be right there. Sometimes it'll be in another place and I got to click through. And I like the fact, to me, it's not just a credit card itself and getting the 3% back. It also includes that experience with the Apple Wallet app, which is really nice.
Very much.
Last thing quickly that I want to encourage everybody to go and vote for. This is fantastic. So I've seen this happen before, where Lego will come with different ideas from folks, and they'll say, hey, we want the community to vote on whether we will actually make this product. And one of these you linked to today is an actual Apple store, which, by the way, I got to tell you, as soon as I saw this, I'm like, oh, that's the store in Chicago and Michigan Avenue. That's sort of what this store looks like. I don't know if that really is or not, but it's all glass on the front end. This is a fantastic Lego set. So I think what happens is that fans will build these themselves, and then they'll submit them, and then now people can go and vote on whether they want to have Lego actually create this set. And I got to create a Lego login just so that I can support this and vote. Yes, we want a Lego Apple Store set. Please, please, Lego, you got to do this.
I think I actually do have a Lego login for my kids are younger, so I have to go log in.
I
agree
that
although this is a generic Apple store, it is heavily influenced by the Michigan Avenue store in Chicago. So for anyone who's familiar with that, that's definitely the main inspiration here. And it's been a while since I looked into this Lego stuff because my kids are older now. But I remember from the days these Lego ideas. I want to say that if something like I think it's if 10,000 people vote for it, then it goes to the next level where Lego actually starts to look into the feasibility. And, here, for example, one of the feasibility problems is Apple may never give them the rights to make an Apple. But then again, you never know. But, Apple is so protective of its logo that, but at the same time, if there's any company that is iconic enough for Apple to consider licensing the logo, maybe it would be for a company like Lego. But it's definitely, regardless of whether folks will ever be able to actually purchase this, it's so I mean, look at what you're showing off right now. It's so fun to look at all the little details.
Right there. A little Lego Vision Pro right there.
It's just too funny. And all built out of Lego pieces. Heck, even just the fact that they were able to get like the curves of an Apple logo with white, those white flat Lego pieces that I remember using when we were young. So it's fun to, even if it never goes anywhere but this webpage, it's still fun to look at on the webpage. Very cute, very cute.
I absolutely think Lego should do this. Apple should partner with them, and then Apple can sell this in the Apple store on Michigan Avenue.
Oh, wouldn't that be awesome? That would be awesome.
And then I'll use my Apple card to go get 3% back on it because I gotta have one on this. That's so fantastic. Yeah. All right, in the know.
In the know.
Jeff, today has been a revolution for me, many years coming.
Okay.
Like many people, I have had a library card. I think our library, I've probably had this card for 21 years, I got to say, right? It's just up the street. We have used it over all the years of my kids being young, but my actual library card has shown that it's 21 years old. So I'll just, I don't know if I can quickly show it. It's green. So now I've got my green screen messing up. It is so dog-eared and tattered. And here's the problem though. Every time I want to go and rent a book, sometimes we're just passing by and I'll jump in. I don't carry my library card with me. I like doing a slim wallet, right? So I don't have the actual card. And if you don't have the actual card, that means I can't go to the self-checkout lane, if that makes sense. So I got to go all the way up to the front now, and I got to find an actual librarian. I got to give them my actual driver's license, my ID. And I'm like, this is such a pain. What I would love is if the library would support me creating my library card in my Apple Wallet.
Sure.
And finally today, I found a way to do this. So I've seen this reported. This is a Apple Insider that I've done. And it's not just for my library card, but this is what I used it for. This is an app. It's a free app, or you can pay $2 if you wanted to upgrade, but you can do all of this for free. The app is called Pass2U, the letter U. So PASS, the numeral 2, and the letter U, Pass2U. And so what you can do now is in this Pass2U app, I went ahead and upgraded because I'm like, this works. I went and tried this today, and it worked perfectly. I don't have to carry my physical Apple, my physical library card any longer because it now lives in my Apple Wallet. You get this app, you can go in, you can either create a template or you can just create, basically, it's what Apple calls a passkey. That's like what the back end is working, right? Because I use Apple Wallet all the time for my boarding passes. I have like Panera Bread and my Starbucks card, and all of those, they support creating an Apple card for the Apple Wallet, right? But this app is what I needed when the service or the local store, they still have a card like my library card, but they don't support creating a passcode or a card for the Apple Wallet. So I go to the Pass2U app. I go in, and since this card is so old, I can't even scan the barcode on here. But there's a number at the bottom of my barcode, which is basically my library number. I type that in, it generates the same barcode for me, and it puts it
Okay.
on the card. And then through the Pass2You app, you can customize the color of the card. You can customize what the language is. You can put a little picture on it, which for me, I just put a picture of my library card. And it added the card to my Apple Wallet.
So
It
the key for
was
you, Brett, if I understand
fantastic.
correctly, is
Yeah,
when you don't, the reason that having your physical card was useful at the library, it's not because of anything special about the card. It's just that it had the barcode on it and you wanted to be able to
exactly.
scan the barcode. I see.
Yes.
So this is
Yeah,
basically allowing you to create a digital barcode. So if any vendor requires you to
correct.
have the actual card, this may not work. But if all they're looking for you to do is to have a barcode,
Scan the
yeah, I see
barcode.
what, there you go.
So
So you're
here's
getting the
another use
barcode on
of it.
here.
Yeah. So my Costco card, right? My wife
Mhm.
has created, she's the primary member of Costco. So there is a digital app and a digital card that you can get in the Costco app, but
Mhm.
she has it on her card. So I can't because I'm not the primary member. I'm like a family
Mhm.
member, right? But the
Yeah.
point is that means I had to carry my Costco card, physical card with me all the time.
Mhm.
But now that I have this, I can just scan this. I can put it in, and I did this in my Apple Wallet now. I have a Costco card in my Apple Wallet because I just generated from the Pass2You app so that it had the barcode in there. So now when I go up to the Costco register, instead of pulling out my physical Costco card, and I can't use the app because I'm not the primary member, I can now just have them scan this little barcode. So it generates the barcode, whether it's a QR code or a
And you've actually done
barcode.
this successfully? The Costco
I
cashier
haven't
would
done the
accept that?
Costco yet, but I
Okay,
did
yeah.
successfully use it in the library. In fact, I did it
Uh-huh.
this morning to where I just walked up, and instead of having my physical library card with me, I just pulled it up on my Apple Wallet, and I had it all
Mhm.
designed and everything, and it scanned it right in, and it recognized exactly who I was. Now, I had
Yeah.
to put in like an extra PIN code because that's the way my library works.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
let's say like you have again, quickly, a local store, like we've got a local grocery store, right? That's not
Mhm.
nationwide. They're not that fancy on the technology side, but they do have a member card, right? Which is great. I always have to look it up every time by using a phone number. Well, now
Yeah.
what I can do is I'm going to generate that local grocery card as an Apple Wallet card through the Pass2You app so that now I can just show that and they'll be able to scan it just as if I had the physical card with me.
Very cool. Well, I just
Yeah.
downloaded the app as you were discussing it, and I'm gonna have to play with it because I agree. I mean, every piece of plastic that I can remove from my wallet so that I don't have to carry it around
Absolutely.
and put it into a digital
Exactly.
form, that is absolutely what I want to do. And so I like the idea. You know, in the past, what I have done is I have taken membership cards and I have put in the information in my 1Password app, which allows me
Yes.
to have like the
Same.
number, which is good. But this goes that one step further and allows you to create the barcode, the barcode, which depending upon what the company or the service is, if they accept it,
Right.
you know, part of me worries that like at Costco, the cashier might look at me like I have horns on my head and say, I'm not going to take something that doesn't
Right.
look like a Costco
True.
card. But I'd have
That's
to try it
true.
and see.
Yeah.
But very cool idea. I did not know this exists. I see that it looks like it's a free app, but you can, if you pay, what'd you say, $2?
And
You get rid of
right.
the
Well,
ads or something like that.
you can
Yeah.
do everything. That's all it does. In fact, I paid the $2 because I'm like, I support this, but you can do everything I've just described with the free version of the app. So try it first,
Cool.
make sure it works for you. And as soon as I realized that it worked, and now I have my library card in my Apple Wallet, which is just absolutely fantastic. I want to do more of this. So Pass2You, I'll have a link in the show notes.
Very cool. Okay, my tip of the week has to do with text messaging forwarding. This is a feature that
Okay.
Apple has supported for a long time, but I make it my tip of the week because I always forget about it. I got a new iPad Pro recently, as you know. It's been what,
Right.
4 or 5 years since I last got an iPad Pro. So I had, or since I got an iPad. So I had completely
Right.
forgotten about this. But when I was using my new iPad Pro for about a week, I noticed, you know what? Some of my text messages are showing up over here, but not all of them. And like the ones I wasn't
Oh,
getting, for
yeah.
example, is, you know, when you like log into some websites and they say, we're going to text you a code and like paste it in, like those codes weren't showing up. Of course, the difference is I realized is because those codes were coming over via SMS, not
Right.
iMessage. And the problem is that although iMessage was
Oh,
automatically
yeah.
working on the Messages app, SMS messages were not, because you need to tell. So here's the thing. If you have a new device that's not the iPhone and you want your SMS text messages to show up on that device, it could be an iPad, it could be an Apple Vision Pro, it could be something like that.
Right.
What you need to do is you need to go to your iPhone, the place that you actually receive the actual text messages over cellular and stuff, and you need to tell your iPhone, I want you to forward text messages to this device.
Yeah.
And even though I had restored my iPad from the backup of my prior iPad, you would think that this would come over, but no, because it's not an iPad setting, it's an iPhone setting. So here's my tip.
Yes.
You need to go to your iPhone settings and go to messages. And then there's this thing called text message forwarding. And then when you tap on that, you can select which of your devices, and it will list each of the devices to which you could forward. So for me, for example, it gives me the option of my iPad Pro M4, my brand new one, and my Apple Vision Pro. Those are the two devices that I have that I can forward to. And so for me, I decided, for my Apple Vision Pro, I really don't need to think, I don't think I need text messages there. So I turned it off from my Vision Pro. I may turn it on in the future if I decide that I need them there. But for my iPad Pro, I turned that on because it had not been on by default. And then, of course, once I turned it on, now I'm getting all those text messages on my iPad. Everything's the way that it should be. And I'm sharing this tip today so that the next time that somebody listening to this upgrades, hopefully they remember, because 4 or 5 years from now, when I get my next iPad, I'm going to forget this completely. So I'm going to have to once again teach myself, wait a minute, why are there no text messages? And then remember to go turn it on and manually forward it. It's a cool feature, though. I mean, it's nice that Apple gives you this ability to, my iPad is not a cellular iPad, but it can pretend like. Now, one thing I did notice is on my list of devices to which I could forward, it does not list my Apple Watch. My Apple Watch, of course, does get those things. It's just that there's something about the Apple Watch that Apple has decided, and maybe it's because they share phone numbers or whatever it is.
That's right.
Apple has just decided, of course, we're going to send your SMS messages to your Apple Watch, and it's not even a choice in text message forwarding. I just thought that was interesting for me. But why Apple made that decision, I don't know, but it is what it is.
Yeah, in fact, on the Apple Watch, you can go into messages and say mirror my iPhone, right?
That's probably the reason why. It's just a different way of getting the same thing. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm so glad you had this tip, though, Jeff, because this has bit me in the butt as well in the past. Because the last time, it was exactly what you said. Either the last time that I upgraded my iPad, maybe it was the last time that I upgraded my Mac. And I love this feature. I love getting messages to all of my devices at the same time, including my Apple Watch. Because then if I want to reply to it, sometimes I want a longer reply and I want to type it as opposed to trying to tap it into my iPhone. And so I like the fact that I can see it come on my iPhone or on my Apple Watch, but then I jump on my iPad Pro with the keyboard or on my Mac and I can reply to it. And you're right. At first, I remember the last time I got this Mac, it wasn't sending. I'm like, what's going on? Like, why? I want what happened? And sure enough, I had to go in and find this setting. So I'm glad that you noticed this, because if you're not aware of it, and you will forget, I know that I will forget. But now, when I do get my new iPad Pro, I will remember to make sure to go and set that up. Good tip on there. Woo, okay, lots of stuff to talk about today, Jeff, but always fun. Thanks for your time, and we'll talk with you next week.
Thanks, Brett. Bye-bye, everybody.